y'all, it's Megan. Welcome back to the channel. Glad y'all are here today. In today's video, come spend a little time with us. Andy had a pretty busy day yesterday while I was at work, and I've got a pretty busy day planned today. I'm going to make what I call jam bars. I found this recipe, I don't know, a year or two ago from Venison for Dinner. If you don't follow her stuff, be sure to check out her blog. There's lots of great recipes there. But it's a good way to use up old jams and jellies. And where I'm making new jams and jellies, I want to get, any leftovers that I have off the shelf. And this is one way that you can do that. So they're very, very good. They kind of put you in the mind of a homemade, like, Nutri-Grain bar, maybe. Something kind of that sort. But they're delicious for breakfast. I'm also going to be making some sweet gherkin pickles. I've never made them before. I found an awesome recipe online. And it's a 4-day process, so I'm on day 3 today. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that, and I'll also post that link down in the description. The original recipe that she has posted, I actually cut that in half because she makes a lot at one time. So just know what I'm going to show you today when you click on the link that I'm doing half of what she shows. So we're just going to need to grab us a bowl, set your oven to 350 degrees. And we're going to start off with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. A cup of quick oats. A cup of sugar. And a half a teaspoon of baking soda. Let's go ahead and just get all the dry ingredients combined together. You're also going to need a cup of melted fat. So that can be butter. I'm going to do actually half butter and half lard. But that can be all butter. I've never tried it with all lard, but I don't know why that wouldn't work. So whichever one you feel like making. Now, we're going to pour our cup of melted fat into our dry mixture. Let's get all that combined together. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't see any dry flour anywhere. If there's a little bit, that's fine. I've cooked it with it like that too. Let's take our mixture. We're going to take about half of it and mash it into this glass 9x13 pan. We're going to make us a crust on the bottom. And we're just going to mash that in there. And if you need more, add more. We don't have to have a lot for the top. Now let's take some of our 2023 strawberry jam. And we're going to just liberally put it on here. Just making sure it's pretty even for the most part across there. For this size pan, it took me 3 little jelly jars, which I did put it on a little bit thick. But if you want to spread it a little thinner, that's fine too if you don't have a lot of extra jam. I've done it. I've done a thin layer and I've done a thick layer. They're both delicious. It's just a little more fruity, of course, if you put more. So now, let's take our rest of our dry mixture that we made, our little flour mixture, and we're just going to sprinkle that on top. Kind of like a little crumble, I guess you could call it. So now we're going to pop this in the oven, 350 degrees, 45 minutes.
I wanted to show y'all something I learned about these sprinklers the other day. You know, the big tripod sprinklers that you keep seeing us use in our gardens. Well, I learned a little hack on them the other day by accident. I had one down across the creek that this piece right here got stopped up on. Matter of fact, it had an earwig got stopped up in it. I don't know how in the world it got in there, but because it was all working good, and then all of a sudden it quit shooting, and it had an earwig in it. So I learned something the other day when I took that out to take it apart. So I'm going to share it with y'all, just in case you don't know. And I'm going to say that most tripod sprinklers would be this way. Any of those type of, that go, you know, that type of sprinkler may all be that way. So let's get into it and show you what we got here. So first, I'm going to screw that right there out, and I'll show you what you need to do. So let's screw this out. And this is nothing but a little brass fitting. And this is where your water comes out. So I've got the fitting out now, and you can see there's a black plastic piece right there. And I'm going to assume that's some kind of water flow restrictor. Well, I was like, wonder what'll happen if I pull that out. So I just grabbed my pliers, yanked it out. Right there's the piece. Right there it is without it. You know, it doesn't open up this hole out here any bigger, but it does open up all this here. So put it right back in. Oh, now it wants to turn out of my way. And put it right back in there. You would be amazed at how much better flow you get now, or how much more water that doing that little modification will actually let flow through that sprinkler just by taking out that little black plastic piece. So hopefully, if any of y'all are using these type of sprinklers or a sprinkler like them, take out that thing and check it out and take it out and get rid of it, because y'all, you can flow so much more water on your garden in a shorter amount of time without this thing in there. But now, let's go out here and get to work on the garden work.
Now, the next thing I got to work on is my sweet gherkin pickles. So I decided, instead of just doing only little ones, I did cut up, and I'm going to try a few slices. Like I said, I ain't never made these before, but I will link the recipe down in the description, the one that I'm using. And this is day 3 of these. It's a 4-day process. So what I need to do this morning, right now they're sitting in a salt water. They've been sitting in that since yesterday. I got to drain that off, but first I'm going to make my syrup. Now this recipe I'm also cutting in half, because I think this makes like 8 pints of pickles, and I don't have that many. Since I'm just trying it out, I'm going to see how I like them first, and then maybe make more later on. So I need to combine about 1.5 cups of sugar and 1.5 cups of vinegar. We're going to do about 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric and a teaspoon of pickling spices. You can make your own pickling spice. I just buy it. Let's use our handy dandy fork. We're going to mix all that together, and I'm going to cut my heat on low for right now. Let that sugar melt. In the meantime, I'm going to drain this liquid off of these pickles here. So you can use a crock to make these. That's what I make my 14-day pickles in. But where I'm just making a really small batch just to try these, I'm just using a 1/2 gallon jar. I looked back at the recipe that I'm using, and it doesn't say to wash these off after you pour that salt out of them, but there's still some salt gathered down here towards the bottom, and I feel like I need to rinse these off, because I know I rinse my 14-day pickles when I do them this way, so I'm going to do that. My sugar's all melted, so I'm going to go ahead and cut my heat up now to get this up to a boil.
So next on my to-do list requires a hoe, which is a little bit too hot to be using a hoe right now, but we're going to go ahead and do it. And I'm going to grab a couple more sweet potato slips right here because I actually have a few more that's popped up. And y'all might be like me, but I can't just let something go. I got to use them. So I'm going to get the two best looking ones right here. Just yank them out of the ground. And that's all I need is two. I'm gonna go out here to the sweet potato bed. We did have, in one of those beds, the vole come back. Well, another vole was in there. So we put up some of these little spinny things from Family Dollar. I think that's where they came from. Anyway, so far so good. I hadn't seen any more vole damage out there. But he did kill two of the sweet potato plants that we had in there. So I thought I'd go ahead and replace them. They'll be, I don't know, like a couple weeks behind, but still, they'll be fine. So you see our little whirly birds there. That's what I call them. And so far they're working. I don't know how long they'll work. But you can tell right here is where one of them was that he got. He ended up killing it. And I will definitely have to come out here and water that because that ground is cooking right now. Uh-oh, he may have got this. Look at there. And that one's right beside the little whirly bird. He's eat the root off of it. I'm a dog. Maybe the little whirly birds don't work. Right there's his tunnel. Look at there. Can y'all see the tunnel? Well, dang. I had high hopes for those things. Me and this vole gonna have a talk. Right here's one that he got, and I stuck it back in. I thought it would survive, but it hadn't. So let's stick this one in there. Anyways, what I'm gonna do now is there's a little bit of weeds and stuff that's coming up in here, like that. It ain't much in this bed. Megan's actually kept this bed pretty clean. So we ain't got much to do in that bed. I'll run through this bed too. Now the vole hasn't been coming over here to this bed. It's just that one over there that he's running in. Here's our bed with our peas and stuff. And I'm gonna go through and bust up all this little crabgrass that's coming up that you see there. And then I'm gonna go and cover everything in a good layer of hay to have as some mulch. If y'all aren't familiar with a hoe like this right here, I had never used one up until this year, and then we found one on a discount rack at a local hardware store, and I thought I'd give it a try. And I tell you what, this little doohickey does a good job. This is actually what Megan has used to keep the weeds out of the big garden over there all year until we put the hay down. So the old stir hoe, that thing works back and forth. See, it's got just a little bit of give in it. And what it does is just slices off the top, the weed right at the root. You don't really have to dig deep down in your soil to do it. So it's quick and effective. It does a really nice job. So I used to laugh at these things. And now I'm talking about how much I like it. All right, so I'm gonna go get me a couple bales of hay down out of the loft and bring out here and bust open and spread some on that right there.
My mixture's boiling pretty good here, so I'm gonna pour this over my pickles. And I didn't figure that would be enough to cover. So this part of the recipe is a little confusing to me, but I'm gonna trust the process here. So this evening now, the recipe says I need to drain this syrup back into the pot, which is all well and good, I understand that part. But then I'm gonna be slowly adding more and more vinegar and sugar to make the syrup. So it shouldn't be enough on the first time I make the syrup to cover the pickles if I'm going to continue adding more and more vinegar. So, like I said, I'm just going to trust the process and we'll see. All right, my jam bars are done. Let's get those out. Oh, they smell wonderful, wonderful. Now, before we cut into these, I'm going to let them cool completely. Like, I'm going to let them sit here probably an hour to let them cool off. And then we'll cut them into slices and get them out of the pan, and I'll show y'all what that looks like.
Here's something I thought I'd never say. I had to go inside because my camera got hot. Kind of foolish. What do we take breaks for nowadays? I had to quit because my camera got hot. Not because I got hot, because my camera got hot. Yeah, it makes it tough in the hot weather. I will say that. These cameras and stuff, they don't care much about this hot weather. All right, back at the task. So with this here, I'm basically going to do just like we done out here in the other garden. See, we've got it down around everything else. Boy, that garden right there is popping right now. Thank goodness we got a way to water it. But I'm just going to put a good, thick, generous layer of hay down. I do realize that that's also going to create a better habitat for this vole. But you know what? It's better than having all these weeds come in amongst the sweet potatoes and growing up through the vines. Because once the vines spread out, you aren't able to get in there and hoe it and everything else. So I really like this method of putting hay down around the sweet potatoes, especially when they're out here in my yard. So I'm going to start with this bed right here first. And I'm going to sit y'all over here in the shade. And maybe y'all won't get too hot while I'm out here trying to spread this hay. Let's hope Mr. Camera here decides he ain't going to get too hot again.
So I need to come out here and pick some of these blackberries. I hope y'all can see a lot of them are ripe. Now where it's been a dry spell here, I mean a super dry spell and hot, our blackberries have suffered a little bit. These are thornless blackberries, which is wonderful because, you know, picking wild blackberries, you get poked all to pieces. But these are really, really good blackberries too. That right there is what I'm talking about. Delicious. Well, I've picked about as much as my little pot's gonna hold. Got about half this bucket full. Look at there. Not too bad, and I still have plenty more out here to pick. So let's go make us some blackberry jelly, and I may just come pick us some this evening to eat on.
Alright, so far I've got this sweet potato bed done and that sweet potato bed done. I've got the TP bed left. This one's going to be the funnest because it's going to be kind of time consuming spreading around all those little plants there. So I thought I'd stop and cool off for just a minute and take a second to explain something that we had come up in the comments on the last video we used this hay. So I guess hay and straw are kind of just like second nature things. You know, I don't think about it. I've been around hay and straw pretty much since I was a kid. So the differences between the two has always been pretty obvious to me, but after a couple of comments in the last video when we were putting hay around our garden, I realized that, you know, not everybody knows what the difference between hay and straw is. And the simple answer to that is hay is cut most of the time from grass. Hay can also be cut from alfalfa or green oats or green wheat or soybeans or when they're green. There's several things that hay can be cut from. But typically, if you were going to be using hay in your garden, and most of the hay you're going to go out and buy is grass hay. So that hay is harvested when it's in a younger stage and it's green and it's full of nutrients and everything else, so you feed the cattle, horses, sheep, goats, whatever. Then straw, on the other hand, is a byproduct from harvesting a grain crop, such as wheat or rye or oats or anything like that. Any type of stemmy crop. Once the crop reaches full maturity and dies, that's when the seed head gets harvested. And so you have the stalk left from the plant, and that's what is baled up and makes your straw. So the reason we have so many seeds in straw, such as the wheat seeds that y'all have seen in our watermelon patch that came up, is because those are just seeds left over that the combine didn't harvest for whatever reason. You know, something couldn't have been adjusted right on the combine or something, and typically you just have seeds left in when you're baling straw. And that's one good reason I like to use hay versus straw. Hay may have weed seeds in it. However, they're not going to germinate. They're not going to be really a problem till the following year after that hay's laid there a long time, because the weed seeds that are in this hay are either going to be like grass seeds or maybe some other type of weed that was in the crop that seeded out. Typically, hay is harvested before those seeds mature. So, you know, chances of having seeds in your hay is actually slim. But, you know, if the hay is harvested at the right time, it's harvested before the seeds are mature. And so they will not germinate if it's harvested before they are mature. However, sometimes hay gets harvested after the seeds are mature, and so that is a problem. But those type of seeds don't germinate near as quick as seeds that would be in straw, such as rye, wheat, or oats. Those seeds will germinate instantly as soon as they hit the ground, as long as they've got moisture on them. So in turn, they can be a problem in your garden beds if you're using straw. So yeah, that's the basic breakdown of hay versus straw and what hay is and what straw is. Hay, you feed your animals. Straw is strictly baled up just for, people use it for animal bedding, mulches, and the biggest industry for straw is pretty much like your guys that are sowing yards. Like, I use a lot of straw in my landscape business. But, you got people out here sowing yards on new constructions and whatnot, stuff like that. And that's the main purpose of straw. Straw really has no nutrient value at all in it because the plant was harvested after it was dead. So there's no nutrient value at all left in straw. So in turn, it's no good to feed animals or anything like that, unless they're just eating what grain seed may be left in the straw. So there is your breakdown from what the difference is between hay and straw. And hay, as we said before, once this gets wet, this creates a whole lot denser mat than what straw does. So it does a better job, with a thinner layer of hay, does a better job at keeping weeds out. Now, I'm going to bring up one more subject here. A lot of people mentioned saying, well, you better watch out. Your hay might have been sprayed with something, or your straw may have been sprayed with something. And that the residue of whatever it was sprayed with, whatever herbicide it was sprayed with, will leach into your garden. And that is true on some herbicides. This is a touchy subject that I don't really care much about talking about on YouTube. But, there's a lot of YouTube channels that I feel like spread fear of herbicides just so they can get clicks. And y'all, that's really how I feel about it. Well, and before I say anything else, let me say that our hay hasn't been sprayed with anything. So I don't have anything to worry about with our hay. But hay can typically get sprayed with something such as 2,4-D or Grazon or anything like that that's a broadleaf weed killer. And, when you're feeding, these people who have got like really expensive horses and nice horses or whatever, they want weed-free hay. So typically, if you're buying some really expensive hay somewhere, there's a good chance it was probably sprayed with something. Now, if it was just sprayed with 2,4-D, then you don't have a lot to worry about. If it was straight 2,4-D, 2,4-D is a herbicide that moves very quickly, and it does its job, and it doesn't have a lot of residue that sticks around. So chances of ever having any type of contamination on your garden from 2,4-D in the hay that you purchase is slim to none. However, Grazon, on the other hand, is a different story. There is a chemical in Grazon. Grazon also has 2,4-D in it, but there is a chemical in Grazon that will hang around and will linger on the hay. It can even go through the cows, like if the cow eats the hay, it can go through the cow's digestive system and come out in the manure. And if you try to compost that manure and then use it on your plants, it's still there. It takes years for that chemical to go away. It will go away over time, but it takes years for it to happen. So your best bet is to stay away from hay that's ever been sprayed with Grazon. If you're buying hay from somewhere that you don't know the farmer, or you don't know where it came from, you need to ask what that hay was sprayed with if you're going to use it for mulch in your garden, or even if you're going to feed it to your animals and you're planning on composting their manure. You need to ask what it was sprayed with. Now, on the other hand, straw. Straw can also be sprayed with something such as 2,4-D. Typically, 2,4-D and Roundup are the two things you may see straw sprayed with. There are other chemicals that get used for straw. I'm not all up into what all the farmers use nowadays for those burn down processes and all. But they will typically sometimes spray a field of wheat or a field of rye or something like that, so they can get in and harvest it earlier, so they can get the next crop in there. And they will also spray with something like 2,4-D to keep the broadleaf weeds out of the straw, because Well, let's face it, people are picky nowadays, and they don't want to go to the store and buy a bale of straw that has a bunch of broadleaf weeds in it and when they're going to sow their yard, because as soon as they see those broadleaf weeds, they're going to automatically think, oh my goodness, this straw bale's got weed seeds in it. I don't want to put it on my lawn. And that's just the simple nature of it. That's how things are. So farmers, in order to have a product to sell, they try to keep a clean product. And that's the basic gist of it. Now, if a straw bale was sprayed with Roundup, which is glyphosate, the chances of that having any residue on it that's going to hurt your plants in your garden is also slim to none. Somebody is going to argue with me in the comments on that and tell me that I'm completely wrong, but Roundup residue does not hang around like that. And even if it did, it's not going to hurt your plants. Typically, once Roundup dries, it is no longer active. Like, it can't kill a plant if it's dry. Roundup has to be wet. And when I say Roundup, I mean glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup and all the other brands of stuff out there, such as Kills-All and, all the other weed killers there is, or grass killers. So typically with straw, with it being contaminated with something that's actually going to hurt your garden plants, there's a slight less chance of that. But it can happen. I guess they could spray straw with Gray Zone. Like I said, I'm not up to date on what all gets sprayed on straw nowadays, because I do know a lot of farmers, especially in our area, because of the growing season, instead of letting it naturally die in the field, they spray it a little bit early. Once the actual seed head has matured, but the vine, the plant itself is not dead yet, they'll come through and spray it early to burn it down so they can hurry up and harvest that crop and get it out of the way so they can plant their next crop. So yes, if you are concerned about residue from herbicides and stuff like that, then you really need to ask the farmer that you're getting it from what was sprayed on it, and do your research on that chemical, because it could have been sprayed with something as simple as 2,4-D, and 2,4-D is not going to hang around. And even if it was sprayed with 2,4-D, you're not going to have any residue left on that straw. That's just plain and simple. You don't got to worry about it. There's a lot of YouTube channels out there that just want to scare the bejesus out of people when it comes to using herbicides. Now, am I saying I'm all for using herbicides? No, that's not what I'm saying here. I'm just telling you the basic truth of it. In a way, I don't want to sound cocky or nothing, but in a way, I feel like I'm probably more educated on herbicides and stuff than a lot of people are, because I have took classes. I take 2 hours a year worth of classes for my pesticide license that I have, and sometimes I take more classes than that. And I just want to get the truth out there instead of having all this fear that comes out about herbicides. Like I said, your opinion on herbicides is one thing, but I'm not for it either. I grow heirloom corn. I don't spray my corn with anything. I don't spray anything on my gardens as far as herbicide. I don't use nothing like that around our gardens or something we're going to eat. But like I said, to each his own when it comes to herbicides. If you are concerned about residue on your hay or straw, well, even if you aren't concerned about it, it's really a good idea to find out from whoever you're getting it from if something was sprayed on it or not. Like I said, do your research on it, on the herbicide deal, and just know where you're getting your stuff from.
Before we get our blackberry jelly started, let's go ahead and cut our jam bars. They're good and cooled off. So they're still a little warm, but that will set up. Look at there. And this will get kind of gummy. Very good. Very, very good. Well, I've got my blackberries all washed off and put in the pot here. There's a leaf that didn't come off when I washed them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pour in a cup of water. I'm going to cut this on low heat. We're going to let that cook down just a little bit until these blackberries release their juice.
That was just perfect. Took 3 bales exactly to do that bed, and that bed. I believe I'm going to drag me a water hose out here. Cause my poor little squash there, or zucchini, whichever one that is, are withered away. I know, I'm sure it's just from the heat. Cause it is hot out here right now, y'all. It is hot. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and water them in real good and mat that straw down. Water in these 2 little sweet potato slips that I planted over here. And I guess I'll be done with this part of the garden work I gotta do today. I'm not sure what else I need to do. I guess I'll start feeding once I get all this watered in.
So our blackberries have simmered for about 10-ish minutes. And now we're gonna mash them with a potato masher.
And I just got done feeding those pigs that y'all sometimes see on those videos that Mama put.
Mash them hard, they ain't gonna hurt them. There you go. Good job. Yeah, see how soft they got and see all that juice in there? That's why we had to cook them for a minute.
It's okay, they're on here.
Yeah, just look. Yeah.
And y'all ever notice, this is a potato smasher. That's what you spin them with.
Yep.
Is that how you get all the juice out?
Without the seeds in it.
Yeah, that's how you get all the juice out without the seeds in it, like we used to do with the strawberries.
So what we're going to be making today is actually true blackberry jelly. I know that I like interchange those words, jelly, jam, preserves, you know. But we're actually going to be making true blackberry jelly with only blackberry juice. Now last year I made more like blackberry preserves. They still had some of the chunks of blackberries in it, and they were fabulous, except I don't know if it's the variety of blackberries that we have, but there were quite a few seeds in it. So like when you were eating it, you were enjoying your lovely biscuit or piece of toast, and then all of a sudden you'd about break your tooth over a seed. So this year I decided to make just straight jelly with no chunks in it, so that way we don't have to worry about those seeds. So we're going to run them through this, I can never remember what these are called.
Are they done?
Food mill, maybe that's what they're called.
Mama.
You can see I've already made some. It's dyed the inside of it purple, but that's how we're going to get all the seeds out and just get our straight juice. We're also going to be making the jelly today with no pectin, which is something new to me, but I did it the other day and it turned out wonderful. So I got brave enough that we're going to try it again.
Now just get on there, do this.
Yep.
You also do that, there's a lot on here.
All right, you going to be my spinner?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see if we can't get us some juice. Let's move your chair. Watch your little hand, because it's hot.
Starter mix.
All right, do it to it.
We done got a lot of juice.
Yep, our goal is to get it to the 4 for right now.
Now we got a ton of juice. And you see all this? That's a chicken scratch. If it looks like that, you better give it to your chickens and it's ready.
Yep. We got right at about 4 cups of blackberry juice, so we're going to put that back in our pan here. Alright. So now we need to, before we cut our heat on or anything, we're going to need 6 cups of sugar. So the recipe that I followed said 1.5 cups of sugar per cup of juice. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in. And I'm actually going to add about a tablespoon of vinegar. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I don't have any lemon juice, so we're going to cut that in half and just do a tablespoon of vinegar. Then before you cut your heat on, make sure you get all that mixed in there.
And where am I going to try some of this tonight? It's good. Like if it's going to be done.
Think we should?
Yeah. We should make it just some biscuits.
I got some leftover biscuits. I think that sounds pretty good. Once this comes to a boil, we're going to let it boil around 10 minutes. And then I'm going to test it on a plate that I got waiting on me in the freezer.
So I hope my little spiel on herbicides there don't lead y'all in the wrong direction here. I'm not at all saying that herbicides are a good thing. What I am saying though is if you're one of those people who are extremely scared of herbicides, do your research on them and do your research from the right place, because sometimes they're not. And I'm strictly speaking of the residue here. I'm not talking about getting, the herbicide itself. I'm speaking of the residue. Sometimes it's not near as bad as everything makes it out to seem. Once again, like I said, Grazon is one I would definitely stay away from. And in all honesty, if you can get it, I would buy hay that hadn't been sprayed with anything. That's just my 2 cents on it. But like I said, don't take advice from me. If you go out here and you buy hay that the farmer said was just sprayed with 2,4-D and it ends up killing your garden, well, I don't want to be responsible for that either. But in all honesty, if it was sprayed with 2,4-D and that's the only thing it was sprayed with, it's not going to kill your garden. I do think today's modern way of agriculture would be extremely difficult without herbicides. I think food prices would be a lot more expensive without herbicides. But that's a subject that really I'd like to stay out of. Anyways, I'm going to get this all watered in here, and I guess I'll go get started feeding.
Alright guys, so it's been boiling almost 10 minutes. So I've got me a plate that I've had in the freezer, and I'm just going to give this a stir and scoop me just a little bit out here and put it on my cold plate. Now if that gels up pretty quick on this cold plate, we know we are ready. So it's real important when you're doing jelly this way that you have a deep pot, because it bubbles up a lot. So let's check it and see. You can see I checked it earlier there. So it's thickened up, not quite jelly yet. So I'm gonna stick this back in the freezer. Spread it out a little bit. This would be much easier if I had a candy thermometer. I had a candy thermometer, and I cannot seem to find it. So I'm going to say that's a good texture there. I'm going to do this just like I do my strawberry jelly. There's really no foam to scrape though. I don't know if it's just the blackberries or what, but I don't have any foam, so that is wonderful. If you don't know how to do my strawberry jelly, what I mean by that is I do the open kettle method, not recommended, all up to you. And I also fill my jars up as full as I can get them. The jelly seems to keep better the less air that's in there. So, there we go. Well, that worked out just about perfect. Got 7 little jelly jars of jelly. I do turn my jars upside down. It helps keep that lid hot for a while, and then I don't store them this way. I will turn them back upright, take the rings off, and store them like you're supposed to. But anyways, guys, that about wraps it up for today's video. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I hope you might have learned a little something. And anyways, hope y'all all have a wonderful weekend. Till we see y'all on the next one. Y'all have a good one.